Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. Today we're checking out trivia for games with an extra dimension. That's right, we're talking about secrets and Easter eggs for Nintendo 3DS titles. If there's one thing that gaming struggled with before the 3DS, it was making stereoscopic 3D a viable option. You either had to make substantial practical and technical compromises, as with the Virtual Boy, or be willing to throw down literally thousands of dollars on a 3D screen. And yet, despite this great selling point and clear advantage, some of the arguably best games on the 3DS weren't all that 3D. In fact, the first game we're talking about is all about becoming 2D, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. The game actually had some pretty noticeable differences between regions, some of which have been documented by professional translator Clyde Mandolin on his website Legends of Localization. One of these changes tells us a little about the perception of body image around the world. In the Japanese version of the game, the Zora Queen's smooth gem is not the source of her power. In this version, the gem is actually the secret to her beauty, and when it goes missing, she becomes fat. After the gem is stolen in the Japanese version of the game, one of the Zora in Zora's domain says he's fond of the queen being fat, but in the US release, he just says that they have to get the gem back. When the player gets the gem back to Auron, that same Zora will be disappointed that Auron becomes slim again. Another Zora also mentions the queen's beauty returning when she becomes skinny again. After completing the House of Gales, Azora says that he was swimming with the queen, but that he couldn't keep up. He implies that he lost her because she was so slim, reinforcing the idea that her losing weight has improved her. These references to beauty and body weight were all cut in the North American version of the game. It's no secret that Nintendo of America has slightly more strict guidelines for its localizers than the developers have back in Japan. Over the years, it seems NOA have become more aware of issues relating to weight and body image. After all, it wasn't too long ago that Nintendo came under fire for calling a 10-year-old girl fat in Wii Fit. The company probably wanted to avoid a repeat of this controversy, and take a more responsible approach that didn't tie Queen Auron's worth to her physical appearance. And now, before we move on, a quick word from this episode's sponsor, Manscaped.com. Manscaped is the world's premium brand for men's grooming and hygiene products, and they've just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the new Lawnmower 4.0. We're excited to be one of the first to try it out, especially with these ceramic blades with skin-safe technology that make sure you don't snag your bag or clip your wrinkles. This upgraded Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer even has a multifunctional on-off switch for the new Travel Lock feature that'll make sure your device doesn't turn on in your suitcase and drain the battery. Speaking of which, you can get up to 90 minutes of trimming done on a full charge. Manscaped also have the best tools and liquid formulas for the big 3 odor zones: your body, your butt and your balls. So join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped to give them the right tools for their family jewels, and get 20% off the new Lawnmower 4.0 plus free international shipping when you use promo code DYKG at manscaped.com. There'll be no more scraping now while manscaping. And now, back to the trivia. Another popular 3DS Zelda release came in the remake of Majora's Mask. The game made some interesting changes over the original N64 release, adding many noticeable differences like updated models and streamlined gameplay. But it also added a few features that can't normally be seen. In the original N64 version, the Moon Children never show their faces, something that the developers no doubt had planned, as they didn't bother to texture under the children's masks, resulting in faceless character models. It's possible that this could have been to save space, but the savings would have been extremely small, making it a bit doubtful. When it comes to the 3DS release, however, it seems the developers decided to go the extra mile and give the children faces, though these are not visible in-game and can only be seen by reverse engineering the game's files. Rather than creating a brand new face for the children, however, the developers decided that the children should all share the same face as the title's Happy Mask Salesman. It's not clear if there is a great reason for this, or if it's just a little Easter egg. One of Nintendo's other blockbuster franchises, Super Mario, also got a lot of love on the 3DS. Super Mario 3D Land took the 2 different branches of the Mario franchise, 2D and 3D, and crammed them together to make a new type of Super Mario title. But of course, it kept a lot of the old standards, like the series Goombas. Speaking of which, the YouTuber SwankyBox discovered a strange oddity within the game's first stage when experimenting with how many Goombas could be killed in a single ground pound. It was discovered that a Cheep Cheep can do damage to a Goomba that is within or has previously been part of a stack. However, it can't harm a solo Goomba that was never stacked, nor any other enemy. With this in mind, Swanky tried out other Goomba types to see how they would interact with Cheep Cheeps. When introducing a giant-tailed Goomba into the first stage, the Goomba would instantly leap a considerable distance off screen, then swipe its tail while out of view. Everything on screen would then take damage, and Mario would warp across the scene, and the giant-tailed Goomba would then die. While continuing to experiment, when moving it to a new location, when the giant-tailed Goomba attacked, not only did everything on camera take damage, but it would also, for some bizarre reason, make almost everything on screen completely disappear. This includes all stage elements, the HUD, and even Mario himself. This resulted in the inability to even quit the stage, likely as it considers Mario to not be touching the ground, which prevents players from leaving the level when paused. Another Mario game which takes yet another different form is the RPG sub-series Mario & Luigi, specifically Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story plus Bowser Jr.'s Journey. If you guys actually bought this remake, you may find that you're part of a very small minority. Nintendo decided to remake Bowser's Inside Story, which was originally released on the DS, after their success of the 3DS remake of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Interestingly, the development team said they actually remade this game for the 3DS instead of Nintendo Switch due to timing, but also wanted to retain the dual screen aspect of the original release. They also mentioned that they skipped remaking Partners in Time as they only wanted to focus on the most well-received games in the series. Though many reviews for the Bowser's Inside Story remake were positive, the game is actually not just one of the worst-selling titles in the Mario & Luigi series, but even one of the worst-selling Mario games of all time. The game's launch was so poor that it's only beaten in its abysmal sales by the games released for the Virtual Boy. This is in direct contrast to the original Bowser's Inside Story, which remains the best-selling release for the Mario & Luigi sub-series. In Japan, the remake sold just under 9,500 units in its first week, with Famitsu's sales tracker reporting under 35,000 copies sold in its lifetime. If that number doesn't mean anything to you, let us put it in perspective. This remake failed to sell so much that it actually sold over 18 times worse than the Virtual Boy console did in Japan. Shortly after the remake's release, Alpha Dream filed for bankruptcy, closing down entirely. Though it's never been directly stated, it's generally believed that the remake's poor sales resulted in the closure of a company that produced some of the most respected RPGs in Nintendo history. From one Mario title to kind of another but not quite, Puzzle & Dragon Z Super Mario Bros. Edition was a pretty strange 2-for-1 offering, which unsurprisingly combined the Mario series with the Puzzle & Dragon series, a game that at one time seemed set to take over the gaming space with some serious force. And as with most popular games, it has some noteworthy curiosities hidden within. One thing that caught our eyes while exploring the game's files is that it's possible to find a rather bizarre unused graphic where most of the graphics for the game's monsters are found. The image is unlike any other in the game, and it's actually a photograph rather than drawn artwork. The image depicts a man wearing rather fetching purple garb, clutching a staff, donning the head of a rather happy dragon considering his decapitation. This photo is likely a member of the game's staff and would have been used as a placeholder. Another surprise hit on the platform was Fire Emblem Awakening, which proved that Nintendo was wrong to assume Western audiences couldn't get on board with story-driven tactical RPGs. Fire Emblem is a pretty complex franchise, strewn with references to classical mythology. From Greek to Roman to Norse, each game references myths and legends within its locations, classes, and even characters. These nods are as prominent during development as they are in the finished product, as seen with Fire Emblem Awakening's Priam. Anyone familiar with Homer's epic poem The Iliad will immediately clock the name, which the character shares with its benevolent ruler of Troy who stood against Agamemnon in the Trojan War. Moreover, Priam is otherwise known as Paris in the Japanese version of Awakening, another Homeric reference to King Priam's foolhardy son. While these names may seem like they've been chosen at random on the face of it, they're apt once you consider the character's backstory. Fire Emblem's Priam claims to be a descendant of a fan favourite Ike, the protagonist of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. In terms of the game's lore, Ike had ascended to legend in his own right. elevated by divine power and granted with the title of the Radiant Hero. It makes sense that the character claiming to be descended from divine heroes would be given the name of a mythological prince, and yet the two couldn't be more different. Homer's Paris incited the war on Troy and is portrayed as a coward deeply unskilled in close combat. Fire Emblem's Priam, however, is a seasoned warrior, disciplined to a fault, and rejects the offer of recruitment unless the player can defeat him and his band of mercenaries. We can't know for sure, but perhaps the name was changed from Paris to Priam in the localization so that he could share a name with a Homeric figure with a more honourable cultural standing. Presumably, the ideal substitute would have been the name of Priam's older, wiser son, Hector, but the name had already been given to another beloved Fire Emblem protagonist years earlier. And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia, and this time we're going possibly as far from the largely family-friendly 3DS as we can with Resident Evil Village. When the demo was released for the game, it seemed like only a matter of time before somebody found something peculiar within it. In most games, temporary text can be used to fill space, with the intention being that eventually the text would be replaced with something more fitting at a later date. While most developers will use the standard lorem ipsum filler text, one of Resident Evil's graphic designers decided to use text from elsewhere for a texture that would appear on a plastic bottle found in one of the homes. By taking a close look at the writing on the bottle, players would see the text, "When you were here before, couldn't look you in the eye. You're just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry. You float like a feather in a beautiful world. You're so very special. I wish I was special." Many will recognize this text as the lyrics from the Radiohead song, Creep. Why these wound up on the side of a plastic bottle is anyone's guess, but we suppose at least the song fits the game's horror themes, being a somewhat unsettling song about an inebriated man stalking a woman he finds attractive. Did you also know that Banjo-Kazooie was actually owned by Nintendo for a brief time and not Rare? Or that some of the Pokemon in Ruby and Sapphire were originally going to be very different? For more facts, check out our videos on Nintendo 64 and Game Boy Advance game facts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more video game trivia, and hit the notification bell as well, because apparently that's also important. Hold on, let me check my notes. Yeah, it says here, it just says have a great day. I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo, baby.